Hey everybody, Jim Kerr here. Can those who volunteer ever give too much? This is an important question for today's business leaders. And, there's pressure to give back, and there's certainly employee burnout to worry about. So, who better to explore this question with me than Jill Slader-Young? Jill's a former educator and currently organizing non-profit efforts, group support, and education for trauma responsive counseling. She believes that pairing alternative therapy methods is the key to helping people regain their true selves. Welcome to the show, Jill.
Nice to be here, Jim. I really appreciate you having me as a guest.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about this. This is a really important topic. So let's hop right in. Key question: can those who volunteer ever give too much? What do you think, Jill?
Sure. We
I
can
thought
all,
you were going to say that.
right. We can all give too much. We've all been guilty of giving too much, whether that be in the professional realm or the personal realm. It comes down to essentially understanding healthy boundaries. Um,
Mm,
Healthy boundaries help us conserve emotional energy, maintain agency, as well as a level of respect. So, I mean, there's a reason why fences make good neighbors. There's a reason why boundaries help with relationships. Um, we need to
yeah.
understand the role of those boundaries when it comes to giving.
Yeah, it just seems like the last 2 years, battling this worldwide pandemic, and we can argue that people are under a lot of stress anyway. And then when you add volunteer, responsibilities on top of that, the challenges can be really immense. And I've got to think that burnout's just something that's going on right now among the volunteer ranks, right? I mean,
Definitely, definitely. Burnout's happening amongst professional colleagues, and
yep,
then you throw in volunteers who are giving their time and effort, many times extremely freely, um,
yeah,
and for nothing else in return. And they have just as many things taxing on their time and their efforts and their attention. So, that burnout level, that level of like, okay, I can't give anymore, it's real,
yeah.
and we see it across the board.
I want to jump into the current nonprofit project that you're working on.
Mhm.
We've uh, had the opportunity to talk a little bit about it before the show, and I think it's an amazing project that you've got going. Go- Tell the folks here in the audience what it's all about.
Sure. So it's Safe Haven Healing. It's a nonprofit organization that deals in alternative therapy methods for survivors of sexual assault, rape, and domestic violence.
Mm,
We have a three-pillar approach. So we have these virtual safe spaces or healing circles where we offer community and guidance, not so much therapy, but conversations and activities to help those survivors on their healing journey. Then we have uh, the alternative therapies, which embrace body modification, such as tattooing, piercing, and things of that nature, as well as um, expressions of anger, healthy expressions of anger, that
mm,
is, break rooms, things like that. More active empowerment when it comes to reclaiming sexuality, and being a sexual being again after sexual traumas. And then we have this third pillar where we're developing an early childhood sex education, which might sound more alarming than it is. It's just based in consent, healthy boundaries, and respect. So we feel like the triage of these things working together, as well as building a space for advocates and allies to create community and build seats at the table for all types of survivors, is the key to getting to that next space and place where we get to move that number, that statistic.
hmm Yeah, I boy, there's so much going on in the greater society and a resistance to a lot of this kind of stuff. I think, right? It
Yeah.
seems to be, an uphill battle, and I give you a ton of credit for taking this on. It's so important and vital, but boy. It's not easy, right? This path is not easy.
No, not at all. A lot of what this mission entails is dismantling a lot of built-in belief systems that we don't even realize we're subscribing to.
Mm,
So a lot of it is deconstructing things within relationships, deconstructing things within parenting practices, within educational systems, within therapy itself,
mhm,
and trying to build it back into something that's a little more autonomous, a little more empowering, um, a little less uneven when it comes to power dynamics,
mhm. Yeah.
um, and
Sort of
not building
normalizing all
handcuffs.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's shift gears. I mean, I want to move on to more around the leadership of a nonprofit and the challenges with that. I think
Sure.
that's the thing that a lot of the audience is going to it's going to resonate with them,
Mhm.
as leaders in their companies and so on. But why do you think people volunteer? Let's go there.
People volunteer for a myriad of reasons. Many times they'll volunteer for a specific cause because it speaks to them, because they either identify with it or they know someone who's close to it. There's some kind of familiarity there.
Hmm.
So that's usually what draws someone in. Uh, but there's also volunteering because it makes you feel good. It
Hmm.
makes you look good. I mean, we're all about perception. We've got that hierarchy of needs. Esteem is one of them.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and in this day and age, volunteering is something that's kind of expected. It's
Right.
kind of been put out there as this is something. Yes, you should be doing it, but you better be doing it, and
Mm.
it needs to be part of like the profile pic and everything else. Um,
Yeah. For
so
sh- for sure. I mean, certainly identifying with the cause is one thing, and wanting to make a difference and give back to the community and all of that, but there's peer pressure, right? I mean, there's
mhm,
peer pressure to participate,
yeah,
and it's also sort of that, I don't know, I hate to say this, but I've got, over the years, so many clients that have told me, oh, I love doing this because I get time off from work.
yep.
Which doesn't seem to be the real driver for this kind of work,
Right.
but it is in the equation somehow,
Sure.
you know?
No, and it's a reality.
Uh,
It's a reality, and yes, if your company gives you time off of work and that means that you're going to donate your efforts to our cause, I can't see that as something bad.
mhm,
But I have to find ways to make that work and make that be something positive within the culture of the nonprofit that I'm steering,
mhm.
and not and have it work with us and not against us.
Yeah, because it would seem that anyone that's doing it to get time off from work isn't, their heart's not in it. They're not giving their best effort and all that. And I don't know. I kind of wonder, you know, in the nonprofits that I've participated in, there's a certain value in having kind of like clear descriptions of the positions for the volunteers and all that. Well, what's your take on that? I mean, is that a way to kind of help pull these people in and maybe make them more serious about, delivering their best efforts?
I think, like anything else, the more rich and descriptive the job is, the easier it is to figure out whether it's the one you should be in. Um, Anything that's
Yeah,
really vague, you might want to proceed with caution.
yeah,
But in volunteer work, there are so many efforts needed and so many different types of work needed that if you do get that volunteer that's there because, hey, I get time off, well, yeah, sure, there's jobs for you. There's jobs that might not be as emotionally invested or as close to the cause, but we still need emails sent. We still need
sure.
copies made. We still need errands
Right,
run. So
right.
if it's something more simplistic like that, I think it's a matter of divvying out those jobs, those volunteer jobs accordingly, and having different levels of involvement available to different types of volunteers
Mm.
because each volunteer is going to be completely different.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a myriad of opportunities for people to participate in, then sure, you're going to be able to leverage the talent that comes your way.
Mhm.
I think it's essential. These job description things are really important because it helps to adjust, I don't know, expectations, just like it does in work, in a
Mhm.
work setting, right? A for-profit type of setting. And people get to see what good looks like as well, right? So you may provide some training or other leadership support to help folks do the job, at the highest level. So being able to describe what the role is and how it works and how it fits into the bigger picture of the nonprofit, I think it's got to be essential. Um, let's shift a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about volunteer burnout and why it happens.
Sure.
What have you seen in your experience with this?
Well, a lot of volunteers come forth if they're tied to the cause, they come in very gung ho, kind of hot and heavy. Like, I want to give everything. Oh my gosh, I'm completely invested. I'm all yours. And then buyer's remorse sets in, like reality
Yeah,
comes
right,
forth, and you're like, oh, geez, wait, I have a job. I have a family. I have a
right.
life. I have all these things. Maybe I oversold myself.
Yes,
Um,
they
and
take on too much.
Right. So then the knee jerk reaction becomes a complete pullback. So I think it's doing this dance with volunteers and also allowing space to say, I did overpromise. Geez, what can I do now? And having more of an open conversation of acceptance of that and saying, yeah, guess what? This is my job and I feel taxed. So I completely understand where you're coming from. Here's how you can continue to be involved, but maybe at a lesser level than what you anticipated. And it's kind of this negotiation that has to happen. Um, it it's also this rush of wanting to feel good and like you're in a good mood, that pleasure and that mood boosting's going on, that dopamine and serotonin is kind of charging,
Right,
and then the novelty wears off,
right.
those levels drop, and that's also a lot of times when reality sets in. So
I want to play a little bit about the dopamine thing, yeah,
sure.
but let me first react to the question, right? So people take on too much. Maybe there's poor self management. They don't
Mhm.
recognize that they've got limits and all that. They may have unrealistic expectations too. They might
Mhm.
get in there and realize, wow, this is harder than I thought.
Yeah.
It demands more of me than I was willing to give.
Mhm.
What I love about what you say, though, there, Jill, is you also do what a good leader needs to do, right? You're going to support that person, you're going to give them guidance. You're, in essence, counseling them, right? To find that
Mhm.
happy medium that they can live with, but still contributes to what the organization is trying to accomplish out there. And I think that's critical because I think a lot of folks don't recognize the leadership requirements of being able to drive these kinds of nonprofit organizations. It's just immense, and a lot of times you're working on a shoestring budget, so you don't have
Yeah.
unlimited resources, and you've really got to count on people to come forward to help get the job
Definitely.
done. But let's talk about the dopamine thing, and I guess I want to frame it more in a question around, I don't know. We asked the question about why do people volunteer. Part of
Mhm.
it is the rush you get from helping people, right? So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that.
So dopamine and serotonin, those are neurotransmitters that work in our brain and they're associated with pleasure and boosting your mood. So, big reason to volunteer. Hey, this makes me feel pretty good. This is kind of drug like. I like this. And
Yep,
we naturally increase that, not just from volunteering, but exercise and nutrition. And of course, we should all eat what we are supposed to and exercise the way we're supposed to. But we find other ways to get these fixes.
yep,
So, volunteering is one of them. And as I had mentioned, novelty is something that drives it too. So, this is something new. We're diving into a new cause and we're around new people, and all of this charges that dopamine and that serotonin. The novelty wears off, it dips. goal achievement also drives that. So if we set a personal
Mhm.
goal for ourselves with volunteering and we've hit it, we're going to take a dip again. So then it's kind of the organization's responsibility to then find some one of those other markers that drives that, and one of those is gratitude. So expressing gratitude and experiencing gratitude. So if we build gratitude into the culture of the nonprofit, that's going to be consistently feeding that dopamine and serotonin level, and
Mhm.
it's also just going to create a nice healthy space for people to be in and feel like when they're giving a lot of themselves, or feel like, there's not a lot of money to go around, that their time and effort is being valued, and that their time and effort is also being respected.
Mhm. Uh, This kind of spurs another question, at least in my head, and that's around the importance of sort of deliberate recruitment and
Hmm.
onboarding.
Hmm.
Because you kind of want to, unleash the energy that comes through the door, right? You
Yes.
want those folks who are maybe on a dopamine high to be
Uh-huh.
able to deliver something really quickly, and then kind of make sure that you keep them, like you say,
Mhm.
back, interested in doing the
Yeah.
mission of the organization. So talk a little bit about recruitment and onboarding, if you would.
I think it's a lot like for profit. I think that's where a lot of confusion comes. Yes, we are a nonprofit organization. That doesn't mean that we function completely unlike any business. We're in the business of change. We're in the business of making a difference. It's still a business,
Hmm.
and there still needs to be business like practices, which job descriptions and realistic expectations and guidelines and rules of engagement. All of that has to be put out there and made explicit,
Hmm.
so that there can be a healthy culture built, and so that there can be a successful mission. Just because we're not looking to make a dollar doesn't mean that we aren't in a business. And again, you need the dollar to make the difference.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think that's part of where some nonprofits may have failed in the past, is looking at themselves as some other completely different animal than
Hmm.
a for-profit business.
Hmm. Yeah, it would seem that that's got to be the case in a lot of instances, where, but I think that quickly becomes, leaders quickly become aware of the fact that, oh yeah, there's a limited budget. How do I leverage that budget to the fullest,
Right.
value and all that?
Mhm.
But again, like it seems like the recruitment or onboarding thing is absolutely critical, right? Because you've got to sort of optimize the fit. If someone
Mhm.
comes in with, I don't know, computer skills,
Right.
well, maybe there's a way to leverage that in a way that's not necessarily the way the person thought when they walked through the door,
Sure.
but it's a huge contribution if they can pick up some of that responsibility to automate some of the things that, I don't know, in the back office, if you will, and that kind of stuff.
Definitely. We have board members that are extremely supportive of our cause, but with their skill sets, we're a little timid, like, okay, I'm happy to be here. I'm really glad I'm here. What do I do here? But then you paint the picture for them and you begin to show them how we are trying to weave together these different skill sets and these different expertise to build an all over fabric that's going to work together to move the mission forward.
Hmm.
So it's not standing on the shoulders of any one person. It's looking at it and going, okay, you're coming to the table with this passion, but you're also coming to the table with all of this experience and knowledge in this space that at first looks unrelated. Well, here's how we can possibly use this in this space.
Hmm.
Are you willing to do that? And then the light bulb goes off, and then they're like, oh, yes, I can run with this. This is
Right.
in my wheelhouse. It
Right.
doesn't feel so foreign anymore. And
Right.
once they realize that there's a place and a space for their skills and for them to bring something that's truly authentically themselves to the table, that's where your investment comes from.
Yeah, it would seem that being as a leader of a nonprofit, being able to articulate a vision that's so vivid and compelling that people want to be part of it, but also being able to tell that story in such a way that people can see their fit. Like, this is
Mhm,
where I fit, and if I play my role
mhm,
to my greatest ability, then I'm going to help the organization achieve its vision. And it's just like that in business. I mean,
mhm.
in fact, one of the nonprofits that I work with, I built a vision story for them as part of
Okay.
the thing, because that's kind of one of my specialties. And it's really, made a difference because it acts as sort of a selection screen. So as
Mhm.
new ideas come along, oh, we should go do X. We can look at the vision story and see, like, does that
Right.
support what we're trying to do? Does it complete the story in some fashion?
Mhm.
So yeah, I think it's really critical to be able to provide that leadership at the top so that people can see that, yeah, this is how I fit. Let's shift a little bit. I've got a couple more questions about the board, but I want to get back to that in a minute.
Okay.
Let's talk instead about, how do you know as a leader that somebody's starting to burn out?
I listen and I watch. As a therapist, I'm trained.
Somehow I thought you were going to say that too, but
Yeah.
okay.
Well, I spent close to 25 years in education, and then I shifted gears into therapy. So all of my practice, and then throw in parent and wife and what have you, and it, all my life has been watching and observing and kind of documenting and moving in and out of spaces. So I watch and I listen, and I make myself available. And it's a lot of communication. It's also a lot of leading by example. So when I walk into a room, I walk into a room completely as myself. So if I've messed up, I will openly say I've messed up. If I dropped communication, I'll openly say I dropped communication. If I'm struggling with self care, I openly talk about that. So I make space for those conversations as well. So if someone's playing their cards close to the vest,
Mm,
they also feel like there's an opportunity to kind of take a breath and
and
admit
open
something.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that to make space for that, I think is important, to openly admit one's own mistakes, to openly show flaws, I think is important in opening that conversation and just really watching and really listening and being in tune to the team that's around you.
Yeah, I mean, I love a lot of what you said there. I loved all of what you said, frankly, but I want to highlight a few of the points that you brought up in there, because they applied widely for all leaders. Anyone who wants to be an exceptional leader has to do some of the things you described. So it's empathy, it's
Mhm.
listening, it's vulnerability. When you come in and go, yeah, I've been a little shoddy on my self-care. Well, okay, that's
Mhm.
being vulnerable, right?
Mhm.
So all of those things are really key attributes of an exceptional leader. So certainly in a nonprofit setting, it's got to be part of the leadership repertoire. You've got to be able to develop those skills so that you can keep people, you know, uh, excited and interested in the mission of the organization. But I would say this, in regard to some of the symptoms, and I'm sharing this more from a business perspective. A lot of times my clients will ask me to come in and help with morale and culture and stuff. And some of the early things that you can do is, you can see, like, burnout's happening when there's a lack of enthusiasm for the work,
Mhm.
absenteeism increases, increased negativity or complaining, right?
For
Yeah.
sure.
And overreacting to simple problems, just like exploding over something. You're like, what the heck was that?
Mhm.
And one of the other things that I do is, I like to walk around and I like to listen like you do. But
Mhm.
what I'm listening for is buzz. Is this
Yeah.
place buzzing? Is there energy here, or is it like the wild, wild west and we've got, uh,
Sure.
winds
You're
and
taking the
winds
temperature.
winds howling down the corridor between cubes? So so yeah, I think all that stuff is sort of ways to monitor how are we doing here, and obviously take the steps that you're talking about, with empathy and listening and so on, to be able to root that out and perhaps help.
Right.
You know, let me shift gears a little bit. We got about 5 minutes left. I
Okay.
wanted to talk a bit about the issue on boards. Do you think stuff like time limits for board members is something that's an important characteristic, or what's your take on that?
I tend to operate in a very organic manner. I think if we're going to be successful and we're going to be honest, because we're all human, it it has to have some kind of organic nature to it. So that you're going to have some board members who are totally invested and want to stay there and are completely committed. So having a term limit for them doesn't make sense, because for them this is a true investment and they want to remain a part of the cause, and they're a positive attribute for everything.
So
For others,
they're getting energy from being here. So if we shut them off, we're not doing them any
exactly.
favors. Yeah.
Right. And meanwhile, they're also learning the culture of your mission, and they become your advocates and your allies. So they're this great asset that builds this experience that then helps onboard other board members like them. So you
Hmm.
don't want to lose that energy.
Hmm.
And then there's others that come to the table who wholeheartedly believe in the cause, but life steps in, things happen. And I think, again, that's where that communication and that openness comes into play. If we allow people to pull up to the table and push away from the table when they need to,
Hmm.
they're much more likely to also come back.
Right.
They're also much more likely to say, hey, I can't do anything on this board right now, but it's got this great mission. There's these great people. Do you think you'd be interested in coming over and lending a hand while I have to step away and I have to handle this thing in life? And
Right.
then you've got this great set of recommendations and this great cycling of people coming in
Sure.
and out that feels much more natural than like an abrupt, like, oh, it's been a year, let's
Right.
change everybody. And then you've got that awkwardness of that shift as well, and you lose momentum, you lose time. And when it comes to some of these things, that's the last thing you want to do.
Yeah, it seems like, you got to play it by ear. I'm
Mhm,
seeing a lot of nonprofits, institute time limits. Part of their
mhm.
thinking is we want fresh ideas.
Right.
Part of it is to manage burnout. Well, like, look,
Yeah.
if you're signing up for a 3-year commitment, there's a sort of there's an end to the to
Right.
the journey. It's gonna.
Sure. But you
So
could also view it as a sentence, like, okay,
right,
oh my gosh, I've got 2 more years that I've
right,
agreed to put in. Oh no.
right.
Whereas if that's not out there, and you
Yep.
have this understanding of, if at any time this becomes too much, or if at any time you need to step away, that's understandable.
Yep.
And again, just creating that conversation and creating that culture of flexibility.
Sure.
We complain about a lot of things in life because they're inflexible, and we're dealing in traumatic spaces. So the last thing I want to do is flex timelines on people
Yeah.
and inflict trauma. We're supposed to be
Yeah, you
doing
don't want undue
more good than
control.
harm, you know?
Yeah. Right, right. Yeah, there's something about undue control that can adversely affect the way people behave, right? So
Mhm.
one last question. How do we fix turnover and retention problems in the nonprofit space?
I think there's not one definitive fit all answer. I think kind of not to like take out the old English lit quotes or anything like that, but
Oh, go ahead.
Emerson. Okay, so he said it. I think he said it best when he said, what you are
I interrupted you. So
that's okay.
who were you quoting, Jill?
Emerson.
Emerson. Okay.
So he said, what you are speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying. And
Mm,
I think if, as a leader, especially in these nonprofit spaces, I think if you pull up as committed and understanding and empathetic and vulnerable and real,
mm.
then anything you're doing and any mission you're involved with is going to be more successful, because we can all say a million beautiful words, but unless we're walking the walk and talking the talk together, it doesn't mean anything, and it doesn't resonate, and it holds no gravity whatsoever.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. In working with clients on this kind of thing in the culture space, I always say give them the mic. And what
Hmm.
does that mean? So it's meaning, it's identity, it's community.
Right.
So if we want to fix turnover and retention in a business setting, right, we give them the mic. We give people that sense of meaning, that they're part of something bigger than themselves, an identity that you're part of this group, we're in it together, and community. And it sounds like you're talking about the same thing when you talk about your board, building a
Hmm.
community of people that can kind of flex in and flex out of, as it makes sense, but broadening as it goes. And then you've got that community that you can count on.
Hmm.
Hey, Joe, it was really great to have this conversation with you. I think it was indispensable. So thank you for your time today. I really look forward to continuing the conversation on LinkedIn Live. And next time, you're going to love this question, Jill. I've got David Marlowe coming on. He's kind of a well-known thought leader, and I'm going to ask him sort of an extension of our conversation today. But the question is altruism just a sophisticated form of selfishness?
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah. So we'll have fun with that.
That will definitely be a good one.
So again, thank you. It was terrific. I encourage everybody to continue the conversation on LinkedIn Live.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Bye.